Welcome everyone to Heart to Heart. I am here and so honored to be with Joanne Bink, who is no doubt one of the best teachers I've ever met in my life. Joanne graduated from Nipissing with a B.Ed in 1989 and started teaching in September of that year with the York Catholic District School Board. She completed her Master's of Education at OISE in 1993 and started teaching in Richmond Hill, where I met Joanne. We taught together at Christ the King School for 9 years while I was still there, and they are 9 of the best teaching years of my life. We had so much fun together as a staff, and I worked closely with Joanne as her resource teacher. It was just a wonderful experience. In 2005, Joanne left the York Catholic District School Board and went to teach in the Waterloo Catholic District School Board, where she finished her career this past June and is now retired. So welcome, Joanne. I'm so excited to be interviewing you. And so
Thanks,
let's
Jeff.
just kick this right off. Let's kick it right off with, what do you love about teaching?
I don't want to take up hours, so I'm going to be succinct. Quite frankly, I think the connection that you can get through teaching. So you talked about us meeting at Christ the King School. That connection has lasted 25 years now. So the connections that you make with other staff who become your friends, who become resources long after you've left the school that you're in, really, really important. Connection with the students, connection with the families, connection with community. For me, that was probably the main joy that I found in teaching. I love the fun that I've had with staff and students. In the actual classroom, my reason for teaching in the class, I've reflected on this quite a bit, and one of the most favorite things that a teacher experiences, probably not just me, but something that really kept me going, was every once in a while you have a struggling student who can't grasp a concept, so you explain it in 3 different ways with 3 different methods of teaching with other students. And finally that student clicks and goes, "Oh, I get it." Like, those moments just fed my soul. And I mean, those moments would be, this is the reason that I'm teaching.
Absolutely. And, you know, I would have to say, Joanne, that watching you with students and still being connected to you after, as you say, 25 years, students really loved working with Joanne. She made a very big impact on them. And she is connected to many of them still after all of this time. She might have taught them in grade 4, and they're, you know, working and long into their careers, married with kids, and they are still connected. So that connection is real. What was your favorite thing to teach?
I think if you just break everything down into tiny things, the read aloud portion of the day was always my favorite. I tried to make the last half hour of the day read aloud. I feel like it was a non-stressful time for everyone. Of course, the subjects that the kids love too, like gym and science experiments. One of the things that I really enjoyed was incorporating the teaching of some just how to live skills, etiquette, if you will. This is how we behave in the classroom. Here are manners that we use in the classroom. This is how you behave in a group, so that you show respect and that you have people listen to you and that you are a good listener. And obviously online etiquette has come in handy as of late. Sports etiquette. I feel like that, other than just a subject, permeates everything that they do and establishes a climate in the classroom that is positive, constructive, productive, and pleasant to be in.
And, you know, it's interesting that you're saying that, because it's one of the things that I remember most about you teaching the kids, teaching them how to be really good human beings and how to really connect with you and with others in the class. And I still refer to your classroom management. I still refer to those kinds of things when I'm now teaching my teacher candidates. So you have definitely made a lasting impact. So Joanne, we're going to talk about online learning in this. I mean, I think I'd like to have you back at another time to talk about non-COVID teaching, but because you finished your career in an online situation, I'm wondering if you can tell us what your experience with online teaching was like.
Um, I think initially, I felt like most teachers going to online, very overwhelmed, not sure how it was supposed to work, wanting to reach all students, but not able to right away, not knowing how. I think there was a little bit of a feeling of mourning for me. Um, it was my last 3 months of my career. I was going to go out with a bang, all of these fun things planned, play day, um, mission day, track and field run club, 100-kilometer club. Like we had so many things planned, and there was a feeling of loss. And I think it's fine to feel, I think most people felt that disappointment and still the hope that, well, by June we'll go back for sure. But as that went on, I think that the knowledge that we weren't going back settled in. I did miss the one-on-one, the faces. For me, because I'm of the older generation, technology was not something that you and I used a lot when we taught together. It was kind of an up and coming. And so learning a lot of the platforms was difficult. Luckily, at the beginning of the year, I had established Google Classroom with the kids. So they did have assignments on Google Classroom. So that part of it, I was really glad that I did, because it was an easy transition to say, okay, we're gonna just do some things on Google Classroom. I think one of the biggest shifts was I felt like I was not necessarily teaching the children anymore. I was just giving curriculum. Here's your math, here's your language. So that was really a shift for me, to lose that connection, because that's one of my reasons for teaching. And then I developed a little bit of patience with myself, and I thought, I can't learn this overnight. And if I can't, my 9-year-olds can't. Their parents can't. Just slow down and learn as they learn, which I have always told the students that I do. I learn just as much as you do. So I lost that sense of urgency, and I started to just become a little more patient. And then I could learn more. Go figure, this is what we tell the kids, to relax so you can learn more. That's basically what happened to me. Once I started relaxing and taking it a little more slowly and a little more gradually, I was much more effective, I think.
Yeah, I think people are really going to have to understand that patience and being good to yourself, just really understanding, which is something sometimes we're, as teachers, we're not that good at. So it's going to be a learning experience for all of us, right?
Yeah.
What did you find, Joanne, were your easiest and your most challenging subjects to teach online?
I think the language portion was easy, and that may be just for me, because we had just started a book club in class, where I had already introduced the theme. I had already given them their books. I had already modeled and shared the reader's response. We had practiced it. So the easiest thing for me was just that continuation. I was in a portable, so I got to go in, collect the books, create PDFs, and then they just continued on with what we were doing. And because they were already in small groups, I had small group meetings with them online, where we could talk about the book like a book club, and we could make predictions together. And I felt like that was a natural transition. The easiest thing then, I would say, was the language, that portion of it. The most difficult was math. It's hard to teach kids that are very kinesthetic learners when they don't have the materials at home to use. And it's hard to make those things up. They might not necessarily have all of those things. We were doing some measurement, and I'm thinking, perfect, because they can measure things at home, and I was using Flipgrid so they could show me things. and they handed things in. It was all in inches and feet and yards. And I'm like, oh, I never even thought of that. So let's step back, show me what tool you're using for measuring. If you don't have one, we made like fake meter sticks. This is how long, measure your doorknob. That's about a meter. Use that piece of thread, or use that, that baseball bat. There's your meter. Now go out and use that. So that was the most challenging because it wasn't as natural of a progression. It seemed like when they submitted their work in class, I would have detected that they were on the wrong track. I would have been able to interject and to be like, oh, let's look at this again. Let's look at this more carefully, or this is a way that you might try this, or here, work with so-and-so. So they'd hand in their work, and then it's like, oh no, they've totally misunderstood this. And that's where the patients helped, because it was going back and saying, let's have a meeting tomorrow. I did a lot of one-on-one with the kids through Google Hangouts. And I would just sit and work with the students that needed that work. So even though it was difficult early in the stages, I feel like I kind of got a handle on it eventually, but it's challenging because you're not there. You can't see, you can't rotate around and see what's happening.
Just, this is kind of a supplementary question that just popped into my head, but about, did you have to do any educating of the parents during that time? Because it just struck me when you were saying the feet and inches, that there'd be parents out there, especially in the way of math, wouldn't have a handle on the math that you're teaching them. So did you find that was a challenge as well?
Absolutely. And I found that parents, for the most part, I feel very blessed when established the relationship with the students, the relationship with the families. I had been in this school for a long time, so they were comfortable with me. And many of them would call or email or ask me to help them, to help the students. So that was a blessing because I feel like I had that, but it wasn't just the math concepts that you were referring to that were difficult for parents. It was the technology. How do they get into, what's their password? How do they get into Google Classroom? How do they create an account for Khan Academy? I was using all of these resources that needed logging in, and it was difficult to get everything off the ground.
Yeah, so parents have learned a lot too, along with their kids, I guess, and that will continue to happen. Yeah, that's an interesting side that I think many people don't really think about, right? For
Yeah,
sure.
and I had some feedback from parents where they were sending me emails saying like, how did you get them to sit and do their work? And so it was kind of like, hey, my secret.
Right.
But they're recognizing some of the things in their child that as a teacher, we are dealing with all the time, multiplied by 25 perhaps.
That's
So,
right. Yeah, it's a challenge, and I think parents and the general public who aren't in education don't realize all those little intricacies that go into what happens in a classroom. And you were one of the best people I ever saw in terms of managing a class. So it's not surprising that you could get them to sit down and learn. So Joanne, how did you manage the mental health of your students, or was it even an issue for you? And
um,
also your own mental health.
I'll start with the mental health of the students. I think the initial communication was really important for me to have with both the students and their parents to know, do you have the technology? Do you have the know-how? Do you have the time? What's your home situation like? Because many of the parents were also then dealing with learning, or sorry, not learning from home, but working from home. And they were then, that was compounded with the stress of having to have their kid learn these things, who couldn't necessarily do it independently at the very beginning. So really having that empathy for the home situation was important, and to keep that line of communication open. I had regular phone meetings with students that I found needed. I had my regular class meeting where students could bring up issues, or I would bring up issues that I was seeing, or meet needs that maybe they wouldn't have known that other students had, but I could see because they were all coming toward me. We had also in our school taken on the Umbrella Project, and where we talked about skills like resiliency and growth mindset, cognitive flexibility. Those were skills that we talked about in class, where I could now lean on the messages sent from those things and say, remember when we talked about grit? Remember when we talked about growth mindset? We don't know how to do this yet, but we will.
Right.
I also in my class this year had access to Go Zen, which is a wonderful mental health anxiety, anti-anxiety program, if you will. And I could access that and give that program to certain students that needed to follow through with some of those skills at home. So I feel like that was an important component that I could incorporate in the online. But I think the parents found some things with their children that concerned them as well.
For sure. Yeah. And how about your own mental health?
I think at first I was a bit of a mess. I was, like I said, in a bit of mourning. I was overwhelmed. I had no boundaries. Like I was trying to find things and make things. And before I could do the read aloud, I had to get the copyright. And before I could put it on YouTube, I needed to make sure that I had safe YouTube so that I could safely, share it with students so they didn't have access to everything else. And I found that was, I was working way more hours than I would have if I were just working in the classroom. So I established some boundaries for myself. I set office hours. Yeah, you might finish your assignment at 7:30 at night, but I'm done.
Yes.
So I basically said I'm available from 8 till 4 every day for one-on-one, for conferences, set up a time, I'll meet with you. And that was really helpful because then that pressure was off, that I could look online if I wanted to, but I didn't have to if I was tired. And another thing that I did was I walked to work every morning. So I would get up, I'd have my coffee, my breakfast, and then I would put on my coat and my shoes and I would go for a walk. And in 20, 25 minutes, I'd come to the door to work and it'd be like, okay, now I'm going to get started. And I feel like the boundaries of just traveling to work and then leaving at the end really made a difference for me.
That's great advice. I love that.
Yeah, I just think, like recognizing you're one person, just like teaching in the classroom, you can't do everything and you can't do it all right away. So recognizing those limits, doing your best, being patient. And then once I got a handle on it, then I could start planning ahead a little bit, which brought me comfort because I knew I was ready for the next day.
Yeah, that's amazing advice. And I think, along with eating well, getting lots of exercise, all of that, I love that boundary setting. So, Joanne, what advice, you've kind of given us a little bit here, do you have for people who are going to be either fully or partially teaching online? And what about the advice for those who are actually going back?
So I would say for teaching online, decide what platform you're going to use, D2L, Google Classroom. Maybe your administrator is choosing the same platform for all the students in your school, because I know with our experience, we just went to whatever we were familiar with, but then families, this child is learning D2L, this child is learning from Google Classroom, that just doubled the stress I feel for them. One of the most beneficial things that I did was collaborate. I still worked with my people. I met with them maybe just to decompress, but to, what are you doing? What did you do? Have you found this? What do you do when? Oh, I found this program, try it out. collaborate, because you cannot find everything you need by yourself, just like in school, right?
Right.
Find things that work for you, find things that your kids enjoy doing, um, because depending on their learning style, they might not want to be on Flipgrid and make a video, so maybe they want to make a slideshow instead, or maybe they want to do it live where they just show you what they've learned and explain it to you, and maybe that's their preference. So I think having that balance and having those plans set so that you know which direction you're going to start in. Naturally, that's going to all change. It might change daily.
Right.
Grid was great when we started it, but it lost the shine came off the apple, and they were not responding to that. So then we try this. So.
Which that stuff is really true even when you're teaching fully in person, because they get used to something and they want something different. So it sounds like really knowing your students, really paying attention to how they're responding to what you're doing and moving on to something else. And I love the collaboration. I always said, and this is, you and I can say this about when we taught together at Christ the King, such a highly collaborative staff. That we all knew we had each other's backs. We were there to share resources and really learn from each other. So that's totally amazing. And I know, Joanne, you've gone in and have helped some of your colleagues to set up their classrooms. So what might you say to the people who are going back to the classroom?
Yeah, I think the underlying theme for everything is safety first. Um, trying to manage those details where they are physically distanced from each other, where the materials that you have can be accessed and safe for them to use. So safety, I think, is obviously the number one priority. I think that's the thing that most people are concerned about, because this is a very unusual situation and everybody's experiencing this for the first time. How are we going to do this? Opens the window for more collaboration and, working from each other's ideas. I think, now not sure where things will go, but hoping things stay open, but always looking ahead to perhaps we are going to have a surge in cases that force them to close the schools. I would probably spend the first month connecting with those kids, getting to know them. What's their family situation like? What are their favorites? Do they have pets? How do they like to learn? What do they already know? What are their strengths? What's their reading level? So if you are forced to do distance teaching again, you have a springboard. You know where you can start with those kids. You know how to group them so that if you're assigning readings, you can group them appropriately. I would also spend the time teaching them the technology. Here, let's all log in and we're going to open our own Scratch accounts. This is how we do that, because coding, you're going to be able to do that when you're at home. If things turn out that way, I would teach them how to use Google Classroom, how to submit assignments, not just click submit with an empty entry. That's not allowed. Just kind of teaching them how to access the material. That's probably what I would spend some time at the beginning of the year doing. And I think things are going to be ever changing. So just be flexible.
Yeah, the flexibility is so important, whether you are in non-COVID times or not, because classrooms and schools are dynamic places. Things change all the time. You never know when the fire alarm's going to go off or somebody's going to get sick. So as teachers, we always have to be ready. So I love that you're suggesting to think that this could happen, because then you'll be prepared. Then you won't be so caught off guard and stressed out, because that's what's going to happen if you're not prepared. So I love that, Joanne.
Thanks.
So Joanne, you've taught for 31 years. You're at the end of your career, which is remarkable and so amazing. And you've touched so many lives, taught so many people, and not just the kids. I would say you also had a significant impact on parents as well. So what wisdom would you give to those who are entering the profession? Because one thing I remember about Joanne, so when I left Christ the King School to go to teach at OISE to the Faculty of Education, I don't know if you remember this, but Joanne had her students make me a book. And it was all the things that kids wanted me to know about teaching teachers. What should I know? Because now I was going to be teaching people who would eventually teach them. So what advice do you have for people entering the profession?
Find your reason for teaching every single day. It could be the smallest little thing. Last year, I had a student come up to me with the letter Q on the page and said, "Can you tell me how to spell the rest of cucumber?" It's so endearing. And those are the things that it's a small moment, but it's just so charming. So I think find your reason every day, no matter what. And every single child is someone's baby. Every single student that you have, no matter how crazy they might drive you some days, or what their quirks are, or what their strengths are, that is someone's baby. And you are responsible for protecting them and educating them, making them the best people that they can be. I think for me, and you've mentioned this before, but class management, really, really important to establish, because if you don't have them attending, if you don't have them engaged, then it doesn't matter how well your lessons are planned. It doesn't matter, because it's going to be lost. So being firm but fair, consistent, make it fun. I always separated the behavior from the child, talked to them about the behavior. There was always peace after we talked about it. I use things like getting them to express themselves. I feel like this because, and I want, and it empowers them to take control of their own behavior. It teaches them to be accountable and responsible. I think balance in your own life, it can and will eat up as much of your time and energy as you let it.
For sure.
You can be in the classroom 24/7. My last year of teaching, I could still spend 24/7 and I still wouldn't be caught up or ahead. So that balance is really important to establish for yourself, because you have to keep refilling your energy tank so that you can do your best work. And be patient with yourself. Choose one thing every year. Think of it as like a set of stairs, where you've got a long set of stairs ahead of you and you're not there. Nobody expects you to be, but pick the one thing you want to focus on and just focus on that. And don't worry about the things that you don't have yet. You will get there. Just keep learning, keep building, and be patient with yourself, because you'll learn what you need to learn as you go. So I think that's kind of what I would say in terms of staying energized to continue through this marathon of teaching.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Joanne. That was amazing advice. And I absolutely concur with everything that you have said. And I know that you, through this interview and through all of your work with other teachers over that 31 years, including myself, you've been a true mentor. So thank you so much. And it's been such a delight to reconnect and have a conversation. So thank you, Joanne.
Well, thank you for having me, Jackie. It is like yesterday that I last saw you, and your smile and your energy is still as invigorating and energizing as ever. And I've been so blessed to have people like you in my life to work with over the years, to do what we have been able to do with the children.
Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you.